Hello. Hi guys. Can everyone hear us? Fantastic. We're just gonna wait a couple more seconds for a few more people to get to log in, and then we'll get started. Oh, fantastic. It's great to hear that you can hear us. Thank you so much, guys. So just to quickly get us started, thank you so much for coming on today. My name is Kantim Sambiso, and I work for Nuffic NESO, which is the Netherlands Education Support Office here in South Africa in Pretoria. This is my colleague Gugu, and she is with the National Research Foundation. And we are the guys who have been in touch with you over the past couple of days and almost 2 weeks now in terms of the promotion of the NRF-Nuffic Doctoral Scholarship. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us, and we hope that the information that we provide today will enable you to better track your application process and moving forward. And of course, you're more than welcome to get a hold of us, either me or Google or both of us, during your application process, where if there's anything that is either unclear or you basically just want to maybe clarify or just need a bit of tweaking. We are there, so we are your resource, so please don't feel bad to use us. Before we get started, I just want to emphasize once again that the closing date for submitting your doctoral applications, your research proposals, that is the 14th of May. And the application process itself is quite lengthy, but it's certainly worth it. And we would hope that you guys will get started as soon as possible if you haven't already started. I see that there's someone who apparently can't hear us. Could you maybe just check your audio settings, please? So briefly, how we're going to proceed today is I'm going to start with basically giving you a very brief overview of why you should study in the Netherlands, why the Netherlands is an attractive place to go to, and then just give you just a general gist of what it is like there. And then Google will proceed with the main focus of today, which is, of course, the PhD scholarships, where she'll basically look at the general overview of the scholarship itself and how to go about also applying. So it'll be that, and then that will follow by a brief kind of Q&A session where we will attempt to either answer your questions right now, but of course, please feel free to enter any questions that you might have in the chat section. And then after this, we will be able to give you both a recording and more comprehensive answers to the questions that you do have. So if we don't get to your question, please do not worry. We will be able to answer it more comprehensively after the webinar itself. So without further ado, I'll then get started. So the question is, amongst a lot of people, is why study abroad, and more specifically, why would you want to study in the Netherlands, or more colloquially known as Holland? Holland is a very exciting country. It boasts a wide variety, both in terms of the innovation and technology of the country, and where you see in a lot of either media or the various medium and platforms around the world when it comes to progress, both in terms of academia, collaborative efforts around the world, development cooperation, and a whole host of other things. It is not only just known for its faltering soccer team, cheese, and all sorts of nice things like tulips, which are very lovely to see, but also for more specifically for present purposes, it's very well known for being a leader as well in terms of academic endeavors. And assuming, of course, a lot of our current audience is very interested in pursuing PhD studies, we also want to kind of dovetail that with a lot of, you also want to know what happens in the country and how the country itself contributes to a much more rich enjoyment of your study period in the country. So in terms of like the Human Development Index, which basically looks at a number of indicators of either the quality of life of the country but also how you fare in comparison to other countries, both within the EU and around the world. As you can see over there, the Netherlands is sitting quite well in fourth place, considering how small the Netherlands is, and of course, just the sheer number of people in the Netherlands, you would see that that's actually quite an admirable place to be sitting at. So for those of you who don't know, the HDI looks at a number of things, such as the longevity of life, education standards in comparison to other World Bank kind of, or in other institutionally mandated rankings, and of course the standard of living in the country itself. So there you will see that it consistently does very well when you look at other countries. So, excuse me. So a 0.92 score compared to Norway's 0.94, there being a very small marginal difference between the top 4 or 5 countries, shows you that the Netherlands itself is right up there. A lot of the other questions that we normally get is a lot of people who perhaps haven't been to the Netherlands or who don't know much about going to the country worry about having to study in the non-English language. And we're here to tell you that that is not at all an issue in the Netherlands. As you look, if you compare to other countries within Europe, outside of the UK, you will see that a lot of, a significant majority of the Netherlands itself is able to communicate in English, compared to, which is second, of course, to the UK. Over and above that, you will be able to see in the different cities and towns and the different institutions that you kind of interact with, that Dutch people are able to indeed interact, and in terms of your lectures, a lot of those will be held in English, so you wouldn't have to worry about other learning Dutch. Of course, it would be a nice plus in terms of integrating yourself into the society, but you do not need to speak Dutch in order to be able to study in the Netherlands. And I think that's an important factor to kind of consider, because you know, some people might feel alienated when it comes to these kind of things. So there, please do not worry, it is not an actual barrier to studying in the Netherlands. Last but not least, I mean, sometimes people wonder about the quality of the institutions in the Netherlands itself, and you know, depending on what your, of course, opinion is on world rankings, Dutch institutions feature prominently amongst both the World University World Rankings and also the QS rankings, where you see 13 research universities being prominently featured in comparable to other comparable countries like the US and the UK and other institutions around the world. So a lot of this you can basically find on our website, which is studyinholland.nl. This is where you can go in order to basically initiate a lot of if you want to have a comparative overview of what is available, because you're able to see it's like a depository of the different programs that are available in the Netherlands, which will enable you to see between the various universities what exactly they have to offer. Right. That's basically the end of this small overview that I wanted to give you. I will now hand over to Gugu, who will be able to go into the actual meat of why we are here today. Just a little reminder to just type into the chat session any questions that you might have while she is presenting, and we'll attempt to address those either towards the end or while she's doing that as well. I'll now hand over to Gugu.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this session today. I will now be looking at the objectives of the NRF-Nuffic Doctoral Scholarship. So basically, the idea is to strengthen cooperation and internationalization between Dutch higher education institutions as well as partner institutions within South Africa. And it's also designed to create and foster better collaboration between South African universities and Dutch universities as well. And one of the main objectives is to promote an advance in science, research, and innovation within those various fields. Another important factor is to effect transformation in the percentage and representation of postgraduate students, particularly from designated groups, namely Black, female, and persons with disabilities would be considered with preference. And now we're discussing the two modalities of the program. Basically, there's the single site mode and the split site mode. So the single site mode is for studies for full-time doctoral studies based in the Netherlands for the duration of 4 years. And the split site mode basically means the doctoral candidate would be based primarily in South Africa and then go over for a visit once a year to the Netherlands during the 4-year period. So a breakdown of the scholarship details is that, yes, it is a 4-year doctoral degree, and you would then be applying for either the single mode or the split site mode. So with respect to the single site mode, the NRF provides an economy airfare for the students, which is valid for not more than 1 year, and to and from the Netherlands. So this also includes subsistence and health insurance based on the minimum requirements set by the Dutch government. So the international visits that will be funded in the split site mode will be for a maximum of 3 months annually over the 4-year period, but also to note that there isn't a minimum duration specified. So you could say go for 2 months and not the 3-month period. So the main areas of support would be to encourage those in the fields of science, engineering, technology, social sciences, and humanities, but also noting that preference will be given to applicants to obtain a doctoral degree, particularly in vulnerable disciplines such as maths, nursing, emerging research areas that exist. Now we're going to look at the eligibility criteria. So the doctoral candidate needs to be a South African citizen or permanent resident, and you need to have a South African ID number. And you cannot hold other scholarships concurrently with the Nuffic NRF scholarship as well. So in your application process, you will need to provide your copy of your degree certificate or an official document from your institution certifying that you've met all the requirements for the master's degree, or if you're still in the process of completing the degree during 2018. Also to note that this program is intended for full-time doctoral studies, and you cannot hold full-time employment. And the main reason for that is that we would want you to complete within a stipulated time period. There is a leeway that you can undertake a maximum of 12 hours of teaching and lecturing per week, but this remuneration needs to be at a rate not exceeding the normal tariff of the institution for the services that you would have rendered if you are working 12 hours a week. In terms of the application process, what you need to do is to follow the link on the NRF online submission system, and applicants need to first register, but if you have registered on the system before, you'll just need to log in, and the instructions are clear on the landing page that I'll proceed to shortly. And as my colleague said, it is a very lengthy process. I do encourage you to start as soon as possible, given that the time period is quite restricted, and it is a very competitive process, so you need to pay attention to your application, and we are here to assist you if you have any questions. So really do get started as soon as possible. So this is the application landing page on the NRF online submission system. So this is just to show you what it looks like. And on the open course section on the right, you would go and select NRF-Nuffic Doctoral Scholarships 2018, and you would then proceed to either register or log into the system. The NRF also does have a technical support team, and the details are included on the landing page on the submission system. So if you are experiencing technical difficulties, you are welcome to contact them during working hours. So they are available between 8 and 4 p.m. South African time. So those are contact details. Please feel free to contact us anytime. We're here to help you. And if you still have further questions, you can enter them into the chat box. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, guys. I see that we have quite a few questions so far. So we'll try to dispose of those as and when they come up. I see that there was a question about whether we require undergraduate study records, and the answer to that is yes. You would need to upload those on the site itself. So please make sure you get those. I'm not sure if there's a requirement for them to be certified.
Yes, there is.
They need to be certified. So please, guys, pay attention to the details. You have to make sure that not only do you submit the documents, but that they are in the form that is required, because that's very important in order for your application to not be rejected within the first round. There's also a question about for the single site mode, do you have to be registered to the universities that are partners? For the single site mode, no, you do not, because the single site mode, just to repeat what Google says, simply means that you will be in the Netherlands for the entire 4 years of your doctoral studies. And that means that as long as you meet the eligibility requirements, you can simply apply. It doesn't matter where you've studied before, as long as you meet the eligibility requirements and your proposal is approved for funding, then that should not be an issue. Another thing on the point of the actual research proposal itself that I may have neglected to emphasize is that it doesn't have to be a comprehensive literature review. We've gotten quite a few questions on this in the past week or so, and I'd like to just emphasize that it just needs to show that you are able to engage with the pertinent literature in whatever your study field is. So it doesn't have to be a fully fleshed out proposal for the purposes of applying for the funding. Moving forward. Okay, any questions that you spotted? Can I apply for this bursary if 2019 will be my second year in my PhD and possibly finish my studies before? I think Google will take this one.
Okay, for the question, can I apply for this bursary if 2019 will be my second year in PhD and possibly finish my studies before the 4 years? So the answer to that is yes, you can apply for the scholarship as long as you're not in your final year of your PhD. And I also see there's a question there. For Tutuka funding, you could possibly send me an email or I'll get back to you and forward your query to my colleagues that work on Tutuka funding. And there's a question about whether you can still apply for this particular scholarship in 2019. This round will be closing on the 14th of May this year. So the next scholarships will be opening out. The call should open around the same time next year. So you would then apply for funding to start towards the end of 2019 academic year or the 2018 academic year. Thank you.
So Debbie has a question about, so you're currently based at Tilburg University already, and does this apply to you? It would apply to you if your studies apply in respect or fall under the fields of study that are part of what Tilburg is offering under this doctoral scholarship. So if, for example, Tilburg has indicated that they are taking law, development studies, and politics, and you are studying politics, then yes, it would apply. However, if it falls outside of that and I'm subject to correction, we could take that offline and give you a more comprehensive answer. Maria, yes, any certified documents can be transcribed by any commissioner of oaths. That will be accepted. There's no specific requirement for that. Evita asked if you need to secure placement in the Dutch university before you can submit the application. Gugu, you want to take this?
Oh, your question is for the single site mode, do you need to secure placement at the Dutch university first? And the answer to that is no. What you need to do is look at page 12 of the application and framework guide. Basically, there's an annexure there that details the participating Dutch higher education institutions. So you would then need to look at your field of study and your respective faculty, and then contact a participating Dutch supervisor and take it from there. And I see a question, would an academic record be valid as proof of my master's degree if I graduate in June 2018? Yes, it would be valid. And I would encourage you to also get a formal letter from your institution to state that you would be graduating. And do make sure that your documentation is all in order. There's also a question that there's a list of universities that are partnering with South African universities for that program. And yes, it is. The list is there that I just referred to in a framework document on page 12. So there are currently, I think, about 11 institutions listed there. Okay, we've also received quite a few queries as to why permanent staff at various institutions are excluded from applying, and that is on the basis of the fact that the scholarship is for full-time study and you cannot be employed full-time. So that would immediately disqualify you in the first round of your application. Oh, and one more. There have been some questions in terms of financial support. When you do have a look at the framework guide, the tables included there that stipulate how the resources would be spread across for the duration of your studies. And also to please note that the amounts in the various categories cannot be moved from one section to the other. For example, if the budget is 7,500 euros for your tuition for the year, and if you don't use all of that up, those resources cannot be moved, for example, into your mobility resources fund. Okay, thank you.
Right, so we have another question from Debbie asking if we could provide you with a list of the various courses that we are referring to. Yes, we can. This is already in the call documents on the NRF site, and it is Annexure 1 right at the back of the scholarship framework document. So for those of you who maybe have not seen it, the scholarship document looks like this, and it is attached to the actual documents in the call documents on the NRF site. I'm not sure if perhaps you need a link to the NRF site, because that we can easily do now. Another question is about whether agriculture forms part of the sciences. And I think that would simply say yes.
I'll get that to you.
Okay. We will get back to you on that. But assuming that there is a university that offers that and they have expressed an interest to be part of the doctoral scholarship, that will also be on the site under the actual specific field of study. And perhaps maybe a correction on my side from earlier when someone asked if if there are any other universities that have MOUs, and I said it's the VU University in Amsterdam. There are other MOUs that are already in works. For example, the ISS school also has one. So these are happening, but the whole point was that they are limited for the first call. However, for the second call, we're quite confident there will be more to choose from. We have another question about salaried employment. And I think Gugu had already said that that is limited in terms of what or how many hours you can work whilst studying at the same time. And I think it is limited to 12 hours per week. So Henry asks if it is possible to qualify for funding and continue pursuing it in South Africa without having to complete 15% there. I mean, I assume by there you mean the Netherlands. And you're busy pursuing a PhD in informatics in Cape Town. Right, so for that, if there is a Dutch university and that offers a PhD in informatics, and you have contacted a supervisor in the Netherlands that is willing to take you on, and provided that you are not in your final year of your PhD, then perhaps you would be eligible to apply for funding. Guys, I'd also like to emphasize that being eligible to apply for the funding is also very different to who actually gets the funding. So just because you are eligible to apply does not mean you will necessarily get the funding, but rather you will most certainly be considered. How often can the nominees come back to South Africa during the 4-year study period? I think, Gugu, you can take this. Just the split side.
For the split site mode, then you would be going to the Netherlands for a maximum of 3 months per annum, and for the rest of the time you would be then based in South Africa. And I see a question there, just to confirm from Maria. For the split site mode, I can only apply at the institutions that have an MOU. Yes, Maria, that is correct. You need to apply at those institutions that have an MOU. And another question, can you please give us the list of universities in Holland in collaboration with South Africa so that we can know which university to pursue our admission? And once again, my colleague did mention to just have a look at the framework document on the last page. I really encourage you to read the documents thoroughly, as it is your basis to start the application, because you will struggle with the application if you have not gone through the framework document specifically, because the time is limited and time is running out, so you need to please get started with your application.
Okay. Right, and then as we are at the tail end of the questions, but we'll certainly take a few more. And another question says, in the split site mode, should the applicant be registered at both universities or just one? So in terms of that, you would have to, your institution in South Africa would have to be a partner to the institution in the Netherlands. And through that, then you would be able to secure the funding. So there has to be, this is the question that keeps on popping up about the MOUs, the Memorandums of Understanding. So those are institutional agreements that the institution in South Africa and the one that is in the Netherlands have to enter into before you are able to do that, to apply. So those do exist, but not for all the universities in the Netherlands. But that is something that we are certainly working on right now.
Just to elaborate on that question, yes, you do need to be registered at both institutions, and your funding would only be then released once you have sent the NRF your proof of registration at the South African or the Dutch institution. But you need to have both, because at the end of your 4-year duration, you would be coming out with a joint degree. So essentially, you would have a graduation ceremony in South Africa as well as in the Netherlands. Oh, I see a question here quickly about salaried employment at a university. Even though you do have sabbatical leave, you still would not be considered because you still have full-time employment. Thank you.
Thank you. Someone has asked us to repeat the question about how often you can come back to South Africa during the 4-year study. Unfortunately, due to financial constraints, you can't come back as often as you would want to. So that would have to be on your own account if you want to come back to South Africa. I presume, for example, during Christmas, or if something were to happen, either in your family or in your personal life. Unfortunately, the scholarship does not cover that, as far as I'm aware. Maria asks about, someone asked about whether the Dutch institution are interested in pursuing an MOU. Can we set this up? Maria, we can definitely take that offline, and the answer to that is yes. You can either send that to either me or Gugu, and we will pursue that. It's not an exhaustive list, but it's just that in order to get those agreements in place, a bit of hard work and pushing has to happen before you're able to apply. Someone says they can't access our presentation documents. It's not available right now, but we will be able to send it to you after this webinar, together with a recording of this, in order to allow you to maybe re-listen to some things that you may or may not have missed, and then to maybe follow up with even more questions. Again, guys, we are available most of the entire weeks leading up to the deadline. So please just make sure that you get any clarities that you might need to get from us. I see that there's a question about the university that I want to work with is on the list, but not in the mathematics department. Can I still apply for that? You would have to apply for a university that has the field of study that you are interested in. Right? Yes. So unfortunately, you can't apply to Utrecht University if they do not have, let's say, agriculture, for example. There has to be an alignment of both the expertise that is offered and, of course, your interest. Someone has asked if there is a Tutuka webinar to get some clarity on their details. Unfortunately, we both don't deal with the Tutuka. You would probably have to contact the respective individuals that are listed as contact persons for that particular funding.
It's not on that list.
And so the other question that we got was whether agriculture is amongst the sciences that can be funded. Unfortunately, it is not on the list provided by the institutions who are willing to provide it, and therefore you would not be able to apply for that, at least in this funding call. Please note that in the upcoming funding calls, for example, the fields of study might change depending on what departments and faculties do get involved.
I see a question there. Is there any specific number required for this call, and how many students are required? The agreement between the National Research Foundation and NRF-Nuffic is to fund 50 doctoral students within a 5-year period. So at this stage, we really encourage you to apply. The more the merrier. Okay, I'll just take one more last one. You said, does my application have to go through the SA Institution Research Office? Yes, that's why you need to get started with the application, because your application is reviewed by a designated authority at the South African University that screens your application before it's sent to the NRF for final submission. Thank you.
Right. I think we have run over time quite a bit, but we really wanted to try and engage with you as much as possible. I do hope that we have provided a semblance of hope and enthusiasm for your guys' potential applications. I do encourage you to pursue the applications, and again, we want to reiterate that it is in your best interests to start contacting the supervisors who are listed on the website, in the call documents on the NRF website, to get that process started as soon as possible, because you do need a letter of support from that supervisor. So it can't just be a last minute kind of application, unfortunately, because you would not be able to complete it in time. And of course, as you all know, professors have got a lot of other commitments that they have in their respective endeavors. I think we will now end the webinar. Again, if there's anything that you missed, we will send the webinar to you as soon as possible, and you are more than welcome to contact us for any further information. Thank you so much for attending, and we wish you all the best as you proceed to apply for this doctoral program. Thank you so much. Bye.